The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are diving into the Stone Zone. Well, Richard Nixon is back in the news. After Nixon was pardoned by Gerald Ford in the aftermath of the Watergate scandal, a scandal about which we know far more today than we knew then, he had to sit for many hours before a federal grand jury and answer questions on numerous matters. And it was there that it was finally uncovered that the Joint Chiefs of Staff had spied actively on the Nixon White House, that those in the military and their allies in the intelligence agencies, no doubt, who opposed ending the war in Vietnam, who opposed a strategic arms limitation agreement with the Soviets, as Nixon would achieve, certainly opposed any outreach to China, were actively spying on the Nixon White House. A naval yeoman named Radford was actively collecting data from file drawers, burn bags, desktops, briefcases, any place he could find it. He was photographing and copying all of this stuff. It would go directly to Admiral Welander, who would send it on then to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs himself, Admiral Thomas Moorer. And Nixon became aware of this. His first instinct was that Moorer should be charged with treason, but ultimately he decided that it would destroy any public confidence in our military, and he never made this public. Now, we already know that CIA declassified documents released roughly a little longer now than 2 years ago, first highlighted by James Rosen, I think then writing for I'm not sure. I think it was Real Near Politics. Anyway, he wrote extensively about the fact that the CIA definitely, based on these declassified documents, knew about the break-in at the Watergate Hotel in advance. Indeed, 4 of the 8 Watergate burglars were actively still on the payroll of the CIA and were still reporting to a handler. Eugenio Martinez, now in his late 90s, was among the 4 still working for the agency. I interviewed him for my book, Nixon's Secrets, and he confirmed his longtime relationship with the agency, as well as the story in which he swallowed the key to the desk drawer where they had been instructed, the burglars had been instructed, to look for a book of good-looking prostitutes from a local call girl service that the DNC used for out-of-town dignitaries. By the way, the Republican National Committee and the State Department evidently used the same agency. So there's a lot more to Watergate than I think people know. But Howard Baker, who was the Republican ranking member on the Senate Watergate Committee, was well aware of the CIA's involvement in Watergate, but he was not allowed by the committee chairman, Sam Ervin, to even put that in the minority report. Senator Fred Thompson then was counsel to the committee, counsel to Senator Howard Baker, also writes that they knew in advance about the CIA operation to take Nixon down. So now it is confirmed again. Now the media is treating this slightly differently. It is what they cite as proof of the existence of a deep state. Dwight Eisenhower warned us about this. So now 2 presidents warned us about it. Nixon now in his deposition before the grand jury, and Eisenhower in his departing marks as president. Eisenhower, by the way, was much underrated as a president because his style was kind of so drab and middle class, and because Ike was not very flashy a speaker, although he was brilliant. He pretended to be non-political, but there's nothing more political than the Army, where he vaulted many ranks ahead of other men to lead the Allied forces in World War II. And we had unprecedented prosperity and peace under Eisenhower. He ended the conflict in Korea, which was kind of a foretaste of what would happen in Vietnam. And we had record prosperity under Eisenhower. But he was so low-key and drab, he doesn't get the credit he deserves. On the foreign policy stage, however, is really where Eisenhower shines, because the concept of peace through strength, rather than going around the world looking for endless foreign wars to stumble into where our inherent national interests are just not clear, is the policy of Eisenhower. Also, the policy of the foreign policy of Ronald Reagan also happens to be the foreign policy of Donald Trump. I was asked today on Newsmax by Rob Schmidt whether I thought that the same people who killed John F. Kennedy took out Richard Nixon in a silent coup, and the answer is absolutely yes. And their motive is very clear. Nixon had won a record landslide. He had already said, as his diary reflects, as his memoirs reflect, and as the diaries of H.R. Haldeman reflect, to cut back the power of the deep state. He wanted to restructure the national security apparatus to take hands out of the professional warriors, none of whom, he points out, were elected. And therefore, he was a great threat to the intelligence agencies. They knew that they couldn't get away with killing him, although there was actually one assassination attempt on him in Miami, which had been documented but was not widely planted. So there's little question here that you see history repeating itself. The attempts by the deep state to set up Donald Trump, based solely on fabricated evidence of Russian collusion from a former British intelligence officer named Steele, working for a company called, I guess it's GPS Fusion. And they come up with this concocted tale about Trump's private time when he's a private businessman in Russia, claiming that he has, in some naughty way, been compromised with these French prostitutes. It's a complete fabrication. I think it was first commissioned and sold to Paul Singer, who then thought about using it for Marco Rubio, and there's no evidence that Rubio himself knew anything about this. And then I think they resold the Steele dossier to Hillary. We know they did because Hillary disguised the payments for it as legal fees. She got caught in her FEC reports. They didn't try to send her to prison, but they fined her heavily. So just as I think it is a straight line, meaning those who killed John F. Kennedy. Why? Multiple reasons, largely because he did not want to give nukes to Israel. He did not want to go deeper into Vietnam. He wanted to begin to withdraw. He did not want to go to war over Cuba. For all those reasons, I think he was taken out. Nixon was taken out in a silent coup, as we have discussed, and we learn more about today, thanks to the great reporting of James Rosen. And then we go almost immediately to the putting Gerald Ford, who's unelected, into office. Ford had a very substantial piece in the Kennedy assassination. You see, the so-called single bullet theory is nonsense. And the problem was that there were several members of the Warren Commission who were having trouble coming to the conclusion that Lee Harvey Oswald, firing 3 shots, had hit JFK all from the back. And it couldn't swallow the theory, the single bullet theory of Arlen Specter, the counsel to the Warren Commission, later senator from Pennsylvania, that one bullet had hit both John F. Kennedy and Governor Connolly. It was Gerald Ford, who's a member of the Warren Commission by virtue of being the House Minority Leader, who, at the request of FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, passed through his deputy, Deke DeLoach, takes a pencil and erases the official autopsy diagram, moving the wound depicted in the upper back of John F. Kennedy to his lower neck. The New York Times has reported this. So this is one of the reasons why I think Ford was selected to be an unelected president after Richard Nixon, and precisely why the deep state likes to keep their man on the job. These are shocking new revelations, and as time goes on, I think people will get I hope we'll get a greater appreciation of Richard Nixon's tremendous accomplishments. I mean, this is the man who ended the war in Vietnam ahead of the schedule desired by the Pentagon. This is the man who reached a strategic arms limitation agreement with the Soviets, which saved this country hundreds of billions of dollars in defense spending. It's a bum rap to say, oh, Nixon started us with China. China was dirt poor and broke back then. It wasn't until Bill Clinton, 30 years later, gave them most favored nation trading status, the Chinese would become the dangerous, militaristic danger that they are to us today. So beyond that, Nixon, of course, desegregated the public schools. About 87% of the schools were still segregated. That was about 7% when Nixon left office. He gave us the war on cancer, the 18-year-old vote. He did away with the military draft. He launched the war on cancer. He unilaterally saved Israel from complete annihilation in the 1973 war, when Israel, surprisingly, due to a failure of their intelligence agencies, found themselves with their backs against the sea from a massive onslaught from both Egypt and Syria. It was then that Henry Kissinger urged Nixon, as his national security advisor, to do nothing because it would provoke the Russians. And Nixon ordered $38 million, that a lot of money, of lethal aid be airdropped to the Israelis in their position, sending planes with millions more in aid, arguing that he would stand with the largest democracy in the country. Later, when Nixon is heard making vaguely anti-Semitic remarks, and then this action is examined, Golda Meir says, it is deeds that are important, not words. And she was precisely right. That's the Richard Nixon I knew. We called him the old man. He really couldn't hold his alcohol very well. After a couple of cocktails, what he liked to call silver bullets, in his case, a ice-cold gin martini, he knew a lot about American history, being the only man, other than Franklin Roosevelt, on the ticket of a national party 6 times. I'm Roger Stone. I'm still a Nixon acolyte. I'm proud to admit it. Right here in the Stone Zone. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more politics.
The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Elon Musk keeps tweeting, or I should say Xing on X, which he's turned into the most important free speech vehicle in the world. It was heroic to not only pay a huge price to take control of Twitter, but then have the courage to open the records to demonstrate how government had worked with Twitter executives to cancel or censor numerous people for having the wrong ideas. So to me, Elon Musk is one of the great heroes when it comes to free speech. He really breaks down the iron wall that is set up against Donald Trump after his election. And he's been a champion of free speech, but he keeps tweeting, Steve Bannon is going to jail. Steve Bannon is going to jail. Bannon, of course, is reeling from the release of photographs and emails that show conclusively that he was close with the convicted sex criminal and charged child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. He was coaching him on interviews and on rehabilitating his image. They shot some allegedly 15 hours of film together. Bannon says it was for a documentary. It's never been released. I think it is more likely practice sessions for a 60 Minutes invitation that had been extended to Epstein, but that Epstein obviously had to cancel because it was 2 days after he was arrested. The emails even show that Bannon was supposed to go to Epstein's island to continue filming with him 2 days after Epstein was arrested, although the difference between Epstein's arrest and mine are quite interesting. In my case, 29 heavily armed FBI agents stormed my home at 6 o'clock in the morning after tipping off a CNN, whereas Epstein was arrested in the small private airport in Teterboro, New Jersey, getting off a jet, and by two polite FBI agents who then thoughtfully one of them put his jacket over the handcuffs so that nobody would see them as he exited. Handled quite differently. Bannon, I think, is revealed as very anti-Trump in these text messages. So there's a huge difference between the Bannon who one sees on the War Room, where he pretends to be a Trump loyalist. This is the same Steve Bannon who said that Trump was not a billionaire, that Trump was that the Trump organization was a criminal. The Trump organization was a criminal enterprise. Said that Donald Jr. had colluded with the Russians. This is a guy who denigrated Trump behind his back. And these email messages with Epstein, he calls Trump stupid. He also says that he, Bannon, is the center of the movement, not Donald J. Trump, which gives you some idea of his inflated ego. But this is a man who pled guilty to embezzling $15 million from the Build the Wall Foundation, was pardoned for it by Trump, recharged for it in New York, and then, strangely enough, he pled guilty to being a fraudster, and a left-wing Democrat judge in Manhattan gave him no jail time. Many people find that very odd. Says he's running for president, but I think his patron post-White House goes by the name of Miles Guo, may have connections to the CCP, and we're investigating that. There is no question whatsoever that that Guo, when he was prosecuted under cross-examination, when asked if his money came from the CCP or anything about the paymaster, notorious Michael G., he pled the fifth 55 times. So we're on the trail of that money. We'll report it right here in the Stone Zone when we get the update on this hot story. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back with more politics on the other side. We're here 5 days a week talking news, history, the day's politics. Sometimes we even talk a little food and fashion. So thanks for joining us in the zone, and we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I don't really know how many times the left, the Democrats really, and their allies and handmaidens in the fake news media can roll out the same exact tactics and playbook and expect us to go for it. I think Nancy Pelosi called it the wrap-up smear, and now they're doing it to Tulsi Gabbard. Previously, they did it to President Donald Trump in the second Ukrainian impeachment. Here's how it works. The twin Vindman brothers, both in the U.S. Army and serving on the National Security Staff, Alex and Eugene. Eugene is now a congressman. Alex is running for the Senate in Florida. Insist that they have overheard a conversation between President Donald Trump, and President Zelensky, in which Trump asks questions about the activities of Biden. There would be nothing improper in such a conversation, but they then go to a third man, Eric Ciaramella, who at that point was working on the staff of Senator Adam Schiff. And he becomes the whistleblower, meaning he goes to the inspector general and he files a complaint. They immediately now have the complaint sealed, so you don't even get to find out what the accusations are. That's precisely what's happened here in this pathetic attempt to take down Tulsi Gabbard. Basically what happened here is that one foreign intelligence person, not an American, told another foreign intelligence person that a member of Trump's family spoke to somebody in government somewhere, and that Tulsi Gabbard was allegedly knew this and had done nothing about it. So we don't even know if that first conversation ever happened. Then they go to the whistleblower, and the whistleblower goes and files this complaint against Tulsi Gabbard, saying that doesn't even, and we're not even allowed to know. Here's the best part: we're not allowed to know what the subject matter is. So sensitive, we're told, that it must be sealed. That creates the aura of mystery that has everybody wrapped up. It isn't until like paragraph 8 that you get to the Wall Street Journal story, which tells you that there was a full investigation and Tulsi Gabbard was completely cleared. So why these attacks on Gabbard? I think there are two obvious reasons. First of all, there has to be unhappiness over the fact that she declassified all of the documents that prove without question, as she put it, that Barack Obama himself was at the head of a seditious conspiracy to stop, to undermine, and then to remove Donald Trump from the presidency using the full authority and power of government. That is the greatest dirty trick in American political history. It's the greatest single abuse of power. And these documents that document that Barack Obama and Joe Biden and National Security Advisor Susan Rice and National Director of Intelligence James Clapper, certainly FBI Director James Comey, the ringleader of it all, John O. Brennan, who manages to not only plant the canard that starts the Russian collusion hoax, the Steele dossier, into the presidential's daily intelligence brief as a way to moving the rationale for the appointment of special counsel and to begin spying through the issuance of FISA warrants through. He manages also to get very rich off his own policies. It is really quite a story. In any event, we would not know about any of these things if it weren't for President Trump's determination and the courage of Tulsi Gabbard. The current CIA director, John Ratcliffe, well, I think he's a good man. I think he could have, when he was a national security advisor for a brief period of time at the end of the Trump presidency, I think he could have declassified these documents. It was Ratcliffe who first called Brennan out as the architect of the so-called Steele dossier insertion. But his report, which he made public, was mild in the sense that it criticized the trade craft as opposed to saying the truth, which is the whole thing was completely made up. Once again, the allegation that Donald Trump, in a Paris hotel suite with a number of beautiful French prostitutes, watches them urinate on a bed previously occupied by Barack and Michelle Obama. Anybody who knows Trump knows that he's a germ freak. Anybody who knows him would know this is most definitely not his scene. But Brennan knows that this is a contrivance. Brennan knows that who paid for it originally, that would be Paul Singer. Who paid for it later, that would be Hillary Clinton, and that it is a fraud. Andrew Weissman, who is the de facto head of the Mueller investigation, the guy who tipped off CNN about my arrest, the guy who wrote my indictment according to the metadata tags on that masterpiece of disinformation. He knew that the Steele dossier was a fraud all the way back to his days as the general counsel to the FBI. So you have that, and of course the other leg in the stool is the entirely false claim that the Democrat National Committee was the target of online hacks by Russian intelligence, or anyone for that matter. it was interesting that in my case, which was based on the premise that the DNC had been hacked and that WikiLeaks, that I was somehow involved in getting WikiLeaks the data, which I was not, and no evidence to that effect was ever put forward by the government. But it is interesting that the FBI admitted at my trial they never inspected the computer servers at the DNC. Their report, which the judge withheld from us at trial, allegedly proved a Russian connection, but the head of the company, testifying under oath before the House Intelligence Committee, finally admitted he had no proof whatsoever. I wanted to prove the underlying premise of my indictment was not true through the introduction of forensic evidence, which would have shown that the download times are too great, that the information stolen from the DNC had to have been taken out on some kind of portable drive out the back door, or would they allow the testimony of Bill Binney, the leading counterterrorism expert in the country? But those are the two legs of the Russian collusion canard. And all America waits to see whether we're going to have accountability and justice, or will these deep state actors slip the punch one more time? Just this action last week, in which this past days ago, actually, where a D.C. grand jury declined to prosecute 4 members of the military who urged other members of the military not to follow presidential orders, which by any measure is treasonous activity, certainly prosecutable. But here's why no Republican, no Trump supporter, no free thinker, no one who is not on the radical left can ever get a fair trial in the District of Columbia. It is literally impossible. Between the jury pool being overwhelmingly and violently anti-Trump, and these openly hostile and biased federal judges, there will be no justice and no accountability in the District of Columbia. That's why it's interesting that the question of Russian collusion and the seditious conspiracy that I argued is a straight line, starting in the Oval Office in 2017 in a meeting chaired by Barack Obama, continuing to 2016 as the Russian collusion hoax, complete with the Mueller investigation, which goes nowhere. The Senate Watergate Committee report, which is a total crock. Every single reference to me in there, by the way, is false. When you ask them where they found it, they tell you the Huffington Post, as if that makes it a fact. Beyond that, you had every effort to stop Trump from the presidency. They tried to keep him off the ballot. They tried to impoverish him. They tried to throw him in jail, and he still remarkably made the greatest single comeback in American political history. But people are wondering whether we have a two-tiered system of justice. I mean, Letitia James, as the New York Attorney General, has prosecuted people for the exact act of mortgage fraud that she was accused of briefly in the Eastern District before the indictment against her was dropped on technical grounds. So is there a different tier of justice for Bill and Hillary Clinton? Is there a different tier of justice for others who violated both the Constitution and the law in their manic desire to take down the human phenomena known as Donald Trump? It's still an open question as far as I'm concerned. But the president's base certainly expects it. The other thing they expect that is very clear is to clear the air on the entire question of the integrity of our elections. We need to know what happened in 2020. We need to see if we can assess the evidence of irregularities and fraud and document all of that. The media did a great job of saying that there was no proof whatsoever, and if you disagreed or tried to produce proof of irregularities or anomalies in the vote, you were censored, you were canceled, you were called a nut. Now, with the FBI raiding the Fulton County Election Board warehouse after Fulton County 3 times refused a demand from the federal government to turn over voting records, we will get to the bottom of the paper ballots. And then there is the question of the electronic voting machines. I I misspoke when I did an interview with one of my very good friends the other day, and I said that I thought Tulsi Gabbard had absolutely proof of foreign machine-based manipulation of our elections. I oversold that. I think what Tulsi Gabbard has is now a clear proof that the technology exists, the capability exists to manipulate voter data in the United States from offshore via the voting machine mechanisms. Whether she has proof that that happened in 2020, in other words, was the proof kept? Were the criminals that stupid? Or is it unprovable? That remains to be seen. So I take back my original comment. I think in the case of both China and Venezuela, both through Smartmatic and also through a second company, Connect, there's some evidence of both Chinese and Venezuelan manipulation and involvement in our elections. It just needs a full and complete investigation. That's why the president has asked Tulsi Gabbard to lead this. That's why she's being attacked by the Wall Street Journal. That's why they're trying to accuse her of doing something wrong. They're deathly afraid of her because she's a fighter. And in the wake of the stunning Russian collusion revelations, and now her being on the question of elections, she is targeted by the far left. Mark Warner, the senator from Virginia, keeps attacking her. He's the same guy who was plotting with Christopher Steele, the author of the Steele dossier we spoke to earlier, as exposed in a set of text messages. Talk about colluding. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone. Don't go away because we'll be back with more politics. It's the weekend, and we assume Donald Trump is winging his way to his Mar-a-Lago mansion in beautiful Palm Beach. That's where I'm dining tonight, and I'll be thinking about you out there on the terrace. Ta-ta, we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You know, you really can't make this stuff up. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is now proposing that taxpayers help bail out businesses who he claims have been hurt by federal immigration enforcement, particularly companies that relied on illegal alien labor to make their profits. Following a large-scale ICE operation in Minneapolis that resulted in more than 4,000 arrests, Walz claimed that the federal government had left the state in economic ruin. I would say that he did that on his own. He announced a plan to distribute $10 million in state funds to support businesses that have been impacted by the deportation of illegals. In other words, they're being rewarded for breaking the law. Under this crazy policy, state officials also argue that fear of enforcement has kept workers and customers home, slashing foot traffic and revenue. Tim Walz is against the arrest and deportation of dangerous, violent criminals. 70+% of those arrested in Minnesota meet that profile of either having a criminal record in their country of origin or a criminal record here or awaiting trial here. Some business owners in Minnesota report that sales have dropped dramatically as the immigration laws are enforced, but much of that has to do with the Antifa-style thugs in the streets hassling ordinary people, turning areas into radical no-go zones and deliberately causing confrontations with law enforcement. Throughout his remarks, Walz instantly praised immigrant entrepreneurs who do little distinction between legal immigrants and those in the country unlawfully. Walz, let me be clear, sat atop this massive fraud that was going on between those in the Somali community and the federal government, where hundreds of millions, before we're done, billions of dollars was siphoned off. That was supposed to go for child care centers, senior citizen centers, transportation centers for seniors, and other COVID-19 programs. Some of this money actually made its way all the way back to Al-Shabaab, the ISIS offshoot in Somalia. And what Walz knew and when he knew about it, I think is a very, very key question. Ilhan Omar seems to have gotten wealthy amidst this blizzard. She came to Congress with $420, I believe it is. She's now, according to public reports, worth somewhere between $12 and $18 million. There is, once again, the question of how these people enrich themselves in public office. That's why I think Anna Paulina Luna, the crusading congresswoman from Florida, is absolutely right in her legislation to bar all trading of stocks and bonds by members of Congress so that they can't benefit from inside information. So seeing Republicans and Democrats, Senator Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma, who I really like, he made a huge profit just prior to the arrest of Hugo Chavez. I think we have to end that kind of insider enrichment. It's amazing to me that the House continues to resist the bill, but Luna is a fighter who will fight to get that to the floor. These members of Congress leaving extraordinarily wealthy based on insider trading, beating the best investment advisors. I saw some guy just follow the trades of Nancy Pelosi, and he became extraordinarily wealthy. She is, of course, the queen of all of this. It is part of the endless scene of public office. In other words, if you're the kind of masochist who wants to be a congressman or a senator, there was a time when I was much younger, I fancied that idea, but then I realized I couldn't suffer the fools gladly and that I couldn't always smile, and I didn't want people prying into my private life. If you're prepared to do all that for power, the money comes with the power. But you get elected to Congress, you spend all your time asking big pharma, big oil, big insurance, big tech, big ag for campaign dollars. It's all about campaign dollars. So I like my friend Anthony Constantino running for Congress up in the northern part of the New York State, 21st District, completely funding his own campaign, put $7 million in his own campaign account, won't take money from any special interest so that he can be immune from special interest pressure. I'd like to see more Republicans take that position. Those are the kind of candidates you're going to have to nominate in 2026. Everybody who wants to throw in the towel is way premature, and the quality of our candidates will be a huge factor. Constantino is such a candidate. Thanks for joining us today on the Stone Zone. It was great telling you about the latest on the Watergate break-ins, and thanks for joining us. God bless you, and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?